What's going on, everybody? This is Chuck Creekmer, aka Jigsaw, and we are here with brother Demetric Muhammad with the NOI research team. How are you doing today, my brother?
Brother Chuck, I'm doing fine by the grace of God.
Good, good. Now, first of all, I would like for you to tell me what you do and your formal title as well.
Well, brother, I'm a student minister under the leadership of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And for the past 10 years, I've had the great privilege and honor of working directly with our beloved minister as a member of his historical research team.
Okay. Now, when we think student, we tend to think young person. We tend to think someone under 21, let's just say. What makes you a student?
Well, you know, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said to us, Brother Chuck, that we should consider ourselves to be situated inside of the classroom of God. And that when we are in the classroom of God, we are always learning. We are always gaining new knowledge and new information. Once upon a time, I went to the dictionary and I was fascinated because I saw that the word student is a synonym for the word pupil. And the pupil is a part of the human anatomy. And it is the part of the human anatomy that either expands or contracts based on the presence of light. So I thought about that definition because I bear witness that the 30 years that I have been a registered member in the Nation of Islam has been an experience where I have been the recipient of divine light and wisdom coming through my teacher, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan.
Okay. Now, let's get into it. You have written a book called But Didn't You Kill Malcolm?
Yes, sir.
Such an interesting title. Now, this book has come out in an interesting time as well. But before we get into that, speak on the book, why you wrote it, and why this title.
Well, Brother Chuck, you know, I have traveled to more than 50 cities throughout America, speaking in mosques, study groups, colleges, high schools, television, radio, internet podcasts. And it doesn't matter where I go, at some point during our presentation, we could be speaking on any number of topics. Invariably, a question will be asked of me, hey, brother, but didn't y'all kill Malcolm? And so the desire grew within me over the years to take what I have learned from Minister Farrakhan and add to that our research capabilities to respond and provide a documented answer for all of those who believe falsely that it is the Nation of Islam that is responsible for the assassination of Malcolm X.
Okay. And what do you attribute that to primarily, that notion?
I attribute it primarily, at least among sincere folk, and I believe many people are sincere, but the information that they have gained up to this point has been proliferated from sources that are admittedly hostile toward the Nation of Islam. And so I'm hopeful that this work, being a published work, where we document our findings, where we include more than 400 sources, that people will be objective enough to read it and consider our analysis.
Okay. Who would you say, who are the sources? Who are the, where is the information coming from based on your research and your fact finding?
Information is coming from the statements made by the parties that are involved, quotes from Minister Malcolm X himself, especially as it regards to who he believed was behind his assassination. An interview with his administrative assistant or secretary, Mrs. Sarah Mitchell, FBI documents, as well as compiling much of the available literature from scholars and researchers who've gone before me, who have themselves found evidence that exonerates the Muslims. So we believe that our work brings together a diverse array of sources that helps us to vindicate the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, Minister Farrakhan, and the Nation of Islam.
Okay. Now, at periods, there are some clips where Malcolm publicly speaks on those that he had conflict with, and he does seem to implicate the Nation of Islam from his own mouth. How do you resolve that? Now, this is not speaking specifically, obviously, with his assassination, but other things that played out publicly that seem to point a finger that Malcolm was doing. How do you sort of reconcile that?
Well, at that time, Brother Chuck, Brother Malcolm was in a conflict or a feud, if you will, with his former teacher, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. And so there was a conflict there. And as Malcolm began to speak out and lash out, members of the nation also rose to defend the most honorable Elijah Muhammad and spoke out in his defense. And so there were words expressed back and forth that created something of a charged atmosphere that, as we document, government forces, law enforcement agencies use to orchestrate and facilitate the killing of Malcolm and subsequently the blaming of the Nation of Islam.
Right. Now, very recently, a letter by former NYPD officer Raymond Wood was made public. And the letter points a finger directly at the FBI as well as the NYPD in helping secure and facilitate the murder of Malcolm X at the Audubon Ballroom. What is your take on that and the nation's belief in this revelation?
Well, being someone that has researched the subject, and we actually reference Raymond Wood inside our book, which actually came out a year ago. This is confirmation, because many who have studied, especially the 60s and the civil rights movement, the Black Power movement, the rise of the Nation of Islam, the rise of the Black Panthers, we are very well familiar with many of the names and persons and groups who were a party to interfering with otherwise sincere Black folk who were just basically trying to form organizations that would be vehicles for us to pursue justice and liberation. So I think that Reggie Wood, and we were blessed to be on an interview with him last night as he gave us more of the backstory to the recent revelation. That revelation is more confirmation. As they say nowadays, he brought receipts. And I think what's most extraordinary about it, Brother Chuck, was, wherein Ray Wood said that as a police officer, he had been hired to encourage members of Black organizations to commit felonious acts. That's extraordinary. And I think that statement alone, time will prove, has wider implications outside of and beyond the assassination of Malcolm X. Because how many of us know Pookie and Ray Ray that ended up locked up and arrested, and all the while they were screaming that they had been set up? Yeah. So now we really have to begin to seriously consider how these revelations represent an indictment, a further indictment on the criminal justice system, and actually help to explain the rise of the prison industrial complex.
Right, absolutely. Are you working with, in any way, the furthering of the investigation, or perhaps the reopening of the investigation to continue to exonerate the nation, or are you letting it play out? I know that there are a number of forces around the letter and the revelation, and they're calling for a reopening of the case.
Well, we have not been invited to participate in their efforts. However, Brother Chuck, you, I'm sure, are aware, for many years, Minister Farrakhan has proclaimed that the files should be open. In the Black community, we in a position where Brother Malcolm's assassination created a wound among us. And the minister has worked for many years to help to bring about a healing of all of the wounds. In 1995, he held a great reconciliation event with Dr. Betty Shabazz at the Apollo Theater in New York, where $250,000 was raised for the daughter of Malcolm X, Kubila Shabazz, at that time, whom FBI officials had entrapped in a plot to assassinate Minister Farrakhan. Yet Minister Farrakhan saw beyond it and rallied the people together to help Malcolm's daughter. So we believe that, you know, the opening of all of the files of these groups would really help our community, our people nationwide, whether you are part of the nation or not, have closure and have healing, because we would then see with great transparency the hidden hand of all of these governmental forces.
Right, definitely. Now, Officer Wood's daughter has spoken out about the letter being a fake. Do you have any opinion on that? I don't know how. Go ahead.
We were on last night, actually, again with Reggie Wood and Student Minister Willie Muhammad of NNV News. And Minister Willie actually put the question to Reggie Wood directly on air. And Mr. Wood shared with the audience that, like many families, oftentimes there are internal dynamics that are the precipitants or the causes, I should say, of certain statements being made. And he at least helped me to understand that internal family dynamics versus an actual impugning of his documentation is actually the cause of the statements that she is making. And, you know, up to this point, based upon what he shared, I believe that it is authentic, especially because, again, this letter is a form of confirmation. And so this form of confirmation really comes after many of us have known about Raymond Wood for years. Many of us have known about NYPD Bossy, Bureau of Special Service Investigation, for years. Anyone that has looked into the assassination of Malcolm X, that information that he shared was not necessarily new information, except that it was actually being volunteered by an active participant in these acts. So it's a very strong, again, confirmation, but it was not something that is being introduced, at least among those of us who are familiar with the case.
Now, last year, Netflix released a documentary called Who Killed Malcolm X? And it was jarring, I would say, to say the least. Do you have an opinion on that? Do you, or does the nation, I should say, have an opinion on that? A feeling, a sense, a general sentiment?
On the Netflix documentary?
Yes. It was a one-off documentary.
Yeah, I saw the documentary, and again, you know, I guess it made some of these things are anticlimactic for me because I'm familiar with a lot of the information. You know, it's been around for a long time. It just was given a big budget and Netflix and given a wide audience, you know.
Right.
So it impacted many people, you know, as though it was new. So, you know, going back to 1977, Brother Chuck, and 78, Talmadge Hayer, who's the only admitted killer of Malcolm X, it was at that time that he gave the names of those that participated with him. So, you know, for many of us that have looked into these kinds of things, and there are many people that, you know, are, you know, self-taught historians or people that just, you know, like in the white community, right? You have a lot of people that really are obsessed with the assassination of JFK. You know, similarly in the black community, there are many brothers and sisters that have done a lot of looking and digging into Malcolm's assassination. So, you know, we knew the name of William Bradley and Talmadge Hayer and others and all of that. But again, I think that where the recent Reggie Wood statement about his cousin Ray Wood makes a much more beneficial announcement, is that, you know, I'm interested in helping us to uncover the hidden hand of those who are outside the Black community, using even members of the Black community as puppets on a string. So I'm not looking at the puppet, I'm looking at the puppet master.
Yeah, yeah. So many people forget about something as simple as COINTELPRO and J. Edgar Hoover, and him really making that his mission, um, to destroy these really positive forces within the Black community. What is the general view of Brother Malcolm in the nation at this point, considering all the history? And we are in this space where he is very much beloved by the general population.
You know, when you want to talk about Malcolm X, to be clear, and we're speaking of a man who was the minister of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who was responsible for the New York Mosque and the eastern region of the Nation of Islam. But he had wide duties that included all of the Nation of Islam throughout North America. He became the national spokesperson for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And during those days, Minister Malcolm was the best defender and the best minister that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad had. And so that, Brother Chuck, was from 1952 basically through May, June of 1964. Now, Malcolm is assassinated in February of 1965. So for most of Malcolm's public life, he was a representative and an exponent of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam. And that's the Malcolm that we know and love. And we did not get a chance, no one got a chance to see Malcolm's ultimate evolution and what he would have gone on to do, because he was assassinated. But I document in my book the statements of those who were close to him, who said that they believed that Malcolm wanted to return to the Nation of Islam. And I believe that, especially when you look at a quote that I have on the back cover of the book, because it's so important. It was a statement coming from Malcolm's last conversation with anyone before he died, Miss Sarah Mitchell. And she says that Malcolm was going to say publicly that he was wrong about blaming the Muslims for seeking to take his life. He had began to add up in his own mind all of the things that were happening to him, especially all of the things that happened to him while he was traveling abroad. And of course, at that time, the Nation of Islam had no footprint necessarily in international affairs to the degree that Malcolm X could be poisoned in Egypt. He was being pursued by strange Jewish characters in Africa. When he got to France, they would not allow him to land in France and speak in France. So Malcolm began to add it up. And so I believe, based upon my study, that he would have returned to the nation. So I have a very fond and favorable view of him overall. I certainly, as a member of the nation, don't like the things that he said about the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. But, sometimes, Brother Chuck, when we are in a state of emotional turmoil, we can lash out at people that we really love and care about. And then in hindsight, we were like, man, I really should not have said that. I really should not have done that. But because of government interference, Malcolm and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad were denied the ability to reconcile. But I believe that they would have.
Yeah. Speaking of reconcile and reconciliation, what, if any, is the relationship between the nation and the daughters of Malcolm, the family, as it is today? Is there a relationship?
I don't know if there's any kind of, substantive relationship beyond respect, that we have for them, and I believe they have for us. I believe it was at the funeral services of Aretha Franklin, where Ilyasa Shabazz warmly greeted and posed for photos with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. I have seen a very viral video, a YouTube clip where she, I think, was on Vlad, and saying that, you know, it was not the nation that was responsible for her father's assassination. And again, as I referenced, in 1995, Minister Farrakhan did something extraordinary. You know, Brother Chuck, I don't know even myself if the authorities came to me and said, hey, listen, we just arrested somebody for plotting to assassinate you. I don't know if I would have the wherewithal to say, well, I don't believe that they were really trying to assassinate me. I'm going to instead go to the aid. And that's exactly what the minister did. And the minister proved to be right. When the, as they say, when everything came out in the open, Michael Fitzpatrick was an FBI operative. And he had, you know, worked to try to get close to Kubila. And so, you know, I think that the minister has done a lot to try to show our care and our compassion for Minister Malcolm and his family.
Yeah, definitely. You just almost touched the nerve. You mentioned, this is going to be off course slightly, but you mentioned Vlad. And
I apologize for that. I don't mean to bring up another show on your platform, brother. I apologize.
It's all right. It's all right. I was just thinking, you know, how Vlad tried to, he had some, I would say, disparaging words to say about the minister, and then turned around and would only apologize if he could interview the minister, which was pretty audacious. What is the, again, general consensus of Vlad at this point? And, you know, I have no real ill will to him. I have to admit, aside from some of the obvious problematic things that affect the Black community.
Yeah, and I think, Brother Chuck, you know, his position with respect to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, see, you know, you have to remember that even though, you know, many mainstream entities hate Minister Farrakhan, you know, by and large, Minister Farrakhan is well loved in Black America.
Yes.
And I was pleasantly surprised to see the community, you know, speak with one voice on this issue, and say, you know, we're not going to any longer rock with you, Vlad, if you're going to be disrespectful and if you are going to outright lie on the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And so I know that there's still members of the Black community that still go on, but I think, you know, what he did to the minister really outed him. And so many people began to identify the fact that, hey, you know, you go on Vlad today and then you get arrested next week. You know what I mean? And so I think it created problems for him that maybe he had not anticipated in terms of having, you know, now I would say difficulty in getting certain ones from the Black community to come on his platform.
Yeah. So in terms of back to the book, But Didn't You Kill Malcolm? One thing you noted as important is getting this to the youth. Is there a specific plan to do that? And how, you know, and not just the youth, obviously folks, you know, of an older persuasion need to probably read this book too. Is there a particular plan to do that?
Well, Brother Chuck, we are seeking any and all opportunities for the widespread distribution of the book. So, and it involves, you know, going on platforms such as yours and others, really letting people know about it, because it is a self-published work. We don't have, you know, the big publishing houses willing to get behind a book that is going to be a defense of the Nation of Islam. So we would just continue to seek any and all opportunities to get it out. And I've been pleasantly surprised to see that, you know, those who get it and read it, they're like, man, I love this book because it introduces, you know, information that I did not know, and it fills in gaps in my knowledge, you know. So I'm right now working hard to do all that we can to make sure that it is known to the public and that people know where to get it.
All right. And I'm going to ask you another question because I saw you had a Wu-Tang mug there. So I have to ask you, there was a period, and it's still there, but it seemed like the nation and sort of some of the surrounding movements were profoundly impacted or represented, I should say, in the hip hop movement. And a lot of my heroes, and I feel like we're seeing this again. But Rick Ross and Busta did something, Jay Electronica as well. How's hip hop feeling, or rather, how's the nation feeling about hip hop these days, in your opinion?
I would say, many of us have mixed feelings, because as you pointed out, you have, the work of Busta Rhymes and Rick Ross, and you have, of course, Jay Electronica. You have others that, are beginning to make a pivot in terms of really a throwback move, because, like I know, Brother Chuck, in the early years of hip hop, what some historians have called the golden age of hip hop, that hip hop was basically message music. Right. It was music that had social commentary in it. It was music where you heard a lot of speeches from great Black spokespersons and activists and leaders. They were sampled, and not just like we have today. We have a lot of artists that are kind of on the periphery. Right. But I was telling my children the other day, I said, once upon a time, mainstream hip hop, you could hear samples from Minister Farrakhan, Dr. Khalid Muhammad, Malcolm X, Dr. King even. And so when hip hop was deliberately turned to be used as a weapon against the rise of Black people, you ended up with this, very commercialized form of hip hop, that the messaging changed from being positive and inspirational to promoting self-destructive lifestyles. And so I would say many of us have mixed feelings. We're hopeful that hip hop will come back to its roots. But, we yet feel the need to speak out, as big brothers and big sisters, not to condemn, but as big brothers and big sisters to help the artists to see that really, I know you might see yourself only as a rapper, you might see yourself only as an MC, but as Minister Farrakhan has always said to the hip hop artists, really, you are a leader. And so now what will you do with your leadership platform? What will you do to help aid your community that gave birth to you? You see us suffering. See our young men filling up prisons. You see our young women being involved in this human trafficking phenomenon. What can you do as an artist to help these social issues among our people?
Yes, absolutely. So please, Brother Demetric, tell people where you can get But You Didn't Kill Malcolm. But Didn't You Kill Malcolm? Pardon me.
It's available on our website, researchminister.com, researchminister.com. And you can order today. It'll be shipped tomorrow. And we just encourage you to get it and, get a chance to see a perspective on the assassination of Malcolm X from the Nation of Islam.
I thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure. Been a pleasure. And I can't wait to dig into this book, because I too have seen, just the alternate perspectives that, I think we need that major balance.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, thank you, Brother Chuck. I appreciate the opportunity.
All right. Thanks a lot.